Right, hola, bon dia from Portugal, where we're talking with Natasha Donn and your top 3 news picks to discuss with everyone this week. And we would welcome your comments in the chat, actually. If you have something to respond with, to say about what Natasha and I are talking about this morning, please do so below in the comments. It's always good to hear from you. And if we have time, we will go to the mailbag because we have had some correspondence, Natasha. But let me begin by asking you how you are this week. And do you ever remember a time in your reporting career as crazy as this?
No, I'm totally shell-shocked. And in fact, I'm so shell-shocked. And it's not just what is happening, but it's the extent of the lies that are just bang, bang, bang. We're being hit by lies from every angle.
Right.
And they're so obviously lies, but there are so many of them, a little bit like a sort of drone swarm, I suppose, that you have no time to even challenge the lies. You just have to go along with them, which is, I guess, what this new world order is all about. It's just, it's a bit like the people who are influencers and everything else on social media. You just go on with the lie. It's just terrible.
Well, in the absolute deluge of questionable information that we're subject to, is that the atmosphere you're describing?
That's a very polite way of saying it. I think it's all lies.
Right. Do you have an example without getting us into too much trouble?
Well, one of the things I thought was marvelous was when the government here was justifying the fact that it had continued to let the Americans use the air base, that actually it's a very complicated situation. But if they didn't let the Americans use the air base, and if they lost the Americans' favor in that regard, the entire economy of that island of the Azores would plummet. So they have to. But what they said to justify it, because of course Spain has said no, off. You're not using our air bases for this ridiculous operation. What it has said is, but not one plane that has been involved in the bombardments has left Large. Well, how are we going to verify that?
Wow. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's quite a claim, isn't it? That is quite the claim. My goodness.
I mean, how do they know that?
Yes.
Who's told them? The Americans? Because if the Americans told them, you may as well just forget it. They're saying so many things. They've justified what's happening on so many levels. Why on earth would we believe them?
Yes. Well,
because it's politically expedient to.
Yes, and we enter into these I think these are areas in which legal people, lawyers, excel, isn't it? Is dancing on the heads of pins with words and nuances.
Exactly.
Because the PM here has said that this is not an endorsement of the action, but on the other hand, some territory of Portugal is being used, and these sorts of distinctions are so fine and paper thin now, aren't they? And arguable. That's the world we're living in now, I suppose. It's not.
Exactly.
It's not the 80s anymore, is it? Or the 70s.
Well, I mean, the Iranian ambassador, who's still in Lisbon, I think, he gave an interview to Antena 1 the other day, and I think somebody on Antena 1 actually asked the question, well, do we become a target now that we are? And he said, I don't.
It's a good question.
Huh?
It is a good question. It's a reasonable question, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. But his answer was very funny. He said, I don't think so.
Thank you for that reassurance, Ambassador.
No, he then said, Portugal and Iran had been great friends, and he didn't think so. But it wasn't a great assurance.
No, keep them guessing. Wow. I think it's perfectly reasonable for us to ask that question when politicians are taking the actions they're taking. And yes, we appear to be in some sort of democracy and also facing the consequences of unilateral actions and whimsical actions. It's a bizarre time for sure. So you remember it being quite as bonkers as this at any other time of your journalistic career?
No, because when the things like with the bonkers time of the attacks, the 9/11 attacks, and then the Iraq War, I was much more focused on bringing up babies. I had my youngest one was a baby because he was born in 2001. So in 9/11 was was in 2001, wasn't
Yes,
it?
it was, yes.
He was only a baby. I remember that he was asleep and that we were watching, his father was eating his normal lunch and, the 9/11 began. So I wasn't having to report in those days. I think I was only working for a magazine, and doing occasional, happy things.
Yes.
But now that I'm actually involved in news reporting, this is just the maddest. It's beyond mad.
The post-mad world. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Do you remember a few years ago they were talking about we were in the post-truth era?
Yes, for sure.
And this is where the post-truth era gets you.
Well, for what it's worth, I call it the age of discombobulation. Let's take a look at your three picks, and we can be influenced to discuss other things. If you have a comment that you want to put into the chat this morning with us as we record live, and of course this will be republished later on at 3:00 for the formal news review we record it live in the morning and then we publish it at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. If you want to be included in that process with a comment, do that now. Pop it into the chat for us. And of course, we have the Portugal resident interview as well every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Find those. There's a lovely section on the website now, actually, Natasha, showcasing all the podcasts, including yours. So let's go first then to the EU court that is going to fine Portugal 10 million euros for its environmental failings. What failings, and what do you make of this?
Well, I think it's wonderful. The failings, it's under something called the Habitats Directive. And under the Habitats Directive, member states have to designate, I suppose they're talking in this particular case of 61, but they have to designate a certain number of areas as special conservation zones. And these special conservation zones really have to be conserved. They can't just be swept away because somebody wants to mine for lithium.
The name is a clue, isn't it? The clue is in the name that it's a conservation zone.
Exactly. Yes. But what's been happening in Portugal is these conservation zones are part of something called Red Natura 2000. And Red Natura 2000 has been completely and utterly trampled by the Portuguese authorities, basically for years and years. Every time there's somebody wants to drill a hole or plaster a landscape in solar panels or erect wind pylons, they say, "Oh yes, this is a far more important thing than conserving an area of land that we hadn't even realized we had," sort of thing. We're not doing anything on it. And so the European Commission, which is interesting actually, because the European Commission on one hand is pushing for all these projects, and on the other hand is saying there has to be conservation of nature. But anyway, the European Commission has pushed for Portugal to get off its backside and designate these areas. It's taken 6 years. It's been 6 years, this wrangle, and Portugal has, very dilatory, designated the areas, but hasn't said what's in them. And the reason that's dangerous, because it may sound like, that's easy enough. No, but it isn't, because in Portugal there is quite a lot of flora, and there might be some kind of animal life, but there's definitely a lot of plant life that is absolutely endemic to Portugal. So if you get rid of it, it's gone from the whole world.
Yes, indeed.
And obviously some people find that relevant and important, and other people think it's idiotic, which is why they haven't bothered to do anything.
Well, it's getting in the way of profits, probably, Natasha.
Well, exactly. But now, if you think about it, 10 million plus 40,000 every day. Yeah, that's a bit painful, isn't it?
Well, not if you're the government who's spending taxpayers' money, I don't suppose. But we shall see if that's enough to make them shamed into doing something.
I think it would leave them wide open to all the greenie type, socialist parties saying, come on, we're wasting money. All this money could be going to social care or,
Well, let's hope so. And my cynicism had me thinking, in another area of Portuguese life, the taxation on cars, that's illegal, isn't it? It makes cars very expensive in Portugal, the taxes that the government put on, and it's against wider EU law. But it would appear, and for many years now, Portugal is happy to pay the fine that's levied by the EU because of the contravention of that, because it's more financially advantageous to charge a tax and to pay the fine subsequently. So
I wasn't aware that they were paying a fine about the cars.
I don't know if they've paid it. They've been.
I was aware that they were being wrapped over the knuckles, but I didn't think it's quite as painfully as 10 million down payment and then 40,000 a day. Because if that was the case, I'm sure they would have to do something. But you're right. There's a lot of things they do, that is against the European Commission. I mean, though the tolls that we paid for years and years and years, I think about 12 years in the Algarve, we paid tolls on a road that had been built with EU funding specifically in order to expand development. And so there was never any idea that it would be then people would be, having to pay to use it. And that was deemed illegal, and it didn't make any difference at all. They just went on.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. So hopefully on this occasion and in this environment, pardon the pun, the court fines of 10 million and the daily fine of 41,250 will be adhered to, listened to, and action will be taken to not destroy these habitats. Just finally on this, Portugal's territory is home to a rich biodiversity, including 99 types of habitats and 335 species covered by the Habitats Directive, which is what is being referred to here, and where the offence is taking place. Right, let's move on to the war on Iran related news, and we'll start with the Ukrainian company, Natasha, here that you are writing about. Ukrainian company producing drones. It's a rather uncomfortable feeling, isn't it? On the one hand, boasting of a unicorn, Portugal-based, but the things that they're making are deadly and hideous.
No, I don't think it's worrying at all. I think this is absolutely fantastic, because this is what we wanted to do. We wanted to become a kind of we wanted to have a defense cluster here and encourage companies from all over Europe to use Portugal or base themselves in Portugal to produce things. And I think it's fantastic. You see, remember, we've got this center, which they haven't actually pinpointed exactly where it is. It's obviously somewhere in the Setúbal type of area.
Yes, they can't reveal the location, can they? Yes.
But they're saying they wanted to become a NATO center of excellence. But the great thing is, Portugal is out of range of things like Russian strikes.
Yes.
And so it's great to be a defense cluster here, because they're not going to reach us if they knew our coordinates. I mean, I'm probably saying that, it's all very, maybe that's also part of the lies, and maybe they have got weapons that could reach us. But anyway, I think it's wonderful. And also I like the fact that we're continuing. We really have always helped Ukraine. We've got so many Ukrainians living here. And I think our commitment to Ukraine has always been pretty good. And I'm very proud of that.
Okay, well, UForce is a Ukrainian and British company which has set up a maritime drone factory in Portugal, which will reach the status of unicorn in defense technologies. A lot of money in defense, and a unicorn. Can you remind us what a unicorn is?
A unicorn is just a privately held startup that is worth, or deemed to be worth, more than $1 billion.
Yes, incredible. The operation was led by
amazing, considering it's only started up in the last 4 years, probably less.
Well, they must have got some good orders in.
Well, they've got some good people behind them, which is including. Do you remember the UK Defence Secretary Ben Wallace? I think he's Sir Ben Wallace now, and I didn't know that when I wrote the story, so I just called him Ben Wallace. But anyway, he was a great Defence Secretary.
Oh, okay. So finding a place in this setup, Ukraine has not just adapted to modern warfare; it has reinvented it. Oleg Roginsky, founder of and CEO of UForce, explains, "We have created a company that can take these battle-proven systems, not just slide presentations, and deliver them to allies now facing similar threats, and not the only." defense and military company doing well. I think, is it Tecaver as well? Is that the name of a Portuguese company as well that seems to be doing well?
Maybe
From
yes, I've heard of that. But you know what's quite interesting is that it's just come out in the international news that America has apparently reached out or asked Ukraine for help in intercepting the.
Yes,
and so we don't know how much Portugal's little base might be involved. We just don't know.
I think this is becoming very confusing on the front lines of military action as well now, where people are just thinking, hold on a minute, are you my enemy or not? Are you my enemy's enemy, or are you an ally here? This is becoming a very, very complicated theatre of war, as I think it's referred to. So there you go. Ukrainian company producing drones in Portugal becomes unicorn. Other war on Iran related news, and everyone I think now is conditioned to expecting price rises for gas, petrol, diesel, etc. You know, gas in the bottles that we use here in Portugal, and gas and petrol at the pumps. The PM stepping in, and he's going to take the hit, a tax hit, to keep prices level, and so it's not too painful for Portuguese people who need to use fuel to go about their daily lives. What do you make of this?
Well, he said he would reduce prices, but yesterday when I was talking in the greengrocers, the greengrocer said, yes, but it's going to be a pathetic decrease, because he had heard that the government would only take down the ISP tax by about a cent.
Right.
And diesel next week might go up by up to 18 cents.
Okay.
So in other words, it sounds good, but again, it may not actually be as great as it sounds. We just got to see. The thing about the price rises, of course, everything will go up.
Yes.
Because by having a more expensive fuel, it means deliveries are more expensive. It means everything has to go up.
Yes.
So our inflation and all our lovely, our poor finance minister is just recovering from a whatever they call it, transient ischemic attack. He's going to have to really keep his stress levels down, because it's going to be difficult.
Gosh, what a time to come back! What a time to come back to work.
I know. There's no rest here, is there?
And what a time to become president. That's in the next few days as well, isn't it? Walking into this chalice. Let's see what he makes of that. So, prices at the pumps.
Our own homegrown calamity. That wasn't enough.
Oh, I see. Yes, of course. The disaster domestically as well as the international war. Yeah. With talk of fuel prices likely to rise by 10 cents at the pumps next week as a direct result of the United States-Israeli attacks on Iran and subsequent escalating conflict. Prime Minister PM Luis Montenegro has pledged that his government will bring in an extraordinary and temporary discount. It's not that extraordinary, is it? I mean, not extraordinary in sense of scale, but extraordinary in sense of action, I guess.
Exactly. I mean, the amount of taxes we pay on fuel anyway, it's mind-boggling. Well, it's basically almost half.
It's a good time to get a bicycle. You pay 23% either on that purchase, and then no further fuel costs after that. Oh my goodness! And many Portuguese people do use bicycles out in the country, and you can understand why at times like this. Squire of the Shires is
just talking like we were just then about the calamity as well. I did do a story. I didn't put it in last night because last night, to be honest, thinking about three topics in Portugal with all this going on. I just felt the whole thing was bizarre. So I didn't think too hard. But the guy who's in charge of coordinating all the rebuilding efforts that will need to go into the help that's going into the center, he has already said that this war is going to completely mess up all their accounting, because the prices will go up. So, everything that they think they can, we will do this, we will do that, will suddenly become more expensive.
Well, cynically headed, Natasha, as I sometimes am, that's quite a godsend, isn't it? If you're a public servant working on budgets, you now have the invisible hand, well, actually quite a visible hand now, of pointing in that direction, saying, sorry, all the prices have gone up. So we apologize. It's not our fault.
Yeah, that's true. That's true as well. Oh dear, I hadn't even thought of that.
Sorry. this week's bogeyman, the Russians. No, it's the Iranians now, says an equally cynical squire of the Shires, I believe, in the UK. Thank you for joining us this morning.
But just talking about the Russians, isn't it funny that they had this marvelous agreement with Iran? They were brothers, they were great, they were good together, but they haven't said a word, really. I mean, they've said, we would like this war to stop, but there's no... There's no, what's the point of having Russia, looking after your back?
Yeah, well, yes.
None at all. I shouldn't think the Iranians should be at all impressed.
I don't like to use terms like this because I think it's quite lazy, but the Chinese and the Russians are incredibly quiet, or we're not hearing what they are saying is not being reported necessarily at the moment. Yes, indeed.
Exactly.
Right, we'll go
I think I've seen something somewhere about Trump's whole strategy may be undermining whatever might happen in Taiwan. But I mean, this is the trouble. Everybody's, this is the age also of conjecture, isn't it? Everybody's saying what might happen, what this might mean.
Yes, like us right now. Let's go to the mailbag, if we may. Thank you for your 3 picks, and I do understand how hard that must be at the moment. We hear from a Barak here, aka Lord Travanca in central Portugal. May I share this with you for your comment here, Natasha? Hola, bon dia, amigo. I'm going to have a short rant here. Oh dear. The lady you had on, the lady I had on, this is Natasha Donn's news review, I'll have you know. This is from the YouTube channel, was talking about the invasion of Iran. This was nearly 2 weeks ago now when we first began to speak of it, when we were becoming aware of it. She stated in the most unethical and unintelligent manner that the Americans expect everyone to roll over for them. I expect you're quite unrepentant about that, Natasha. I cannot emphasize strongly enough how offensive her words were. She obviously
Who cares? Why do I care?
She obviously did not stop to think before opening her mouth. As an American, if we can state for the record on Barak's behalf here, as an American, I do not approve of what Trump is doing. And in fact, I am ashamed that Portugal is allowing Trump to use the airbase in the Azores at all. Well, Natasha has gone into, we've talked about that this morning. He should have told Trump no, just like the UK did. Kind of UK said no, but there's this clause as well. Spain said no. So inform the lady. She needs to correct her speech and thought process. It is not the Americans who expect everyone to roll over. It is Trump, and that is not the same. Natasha, over to you.
I see what you mean. What I mean by the Americans in this case is the American administration.
Of course, yes. And that's why I was saying before, we are lazy, aren't we, with this whole way of describing things. The White House, Downing Street, the Chinese, the Russians. We're talking about the government.
I met some Americans on the beach the other day, and I said, and they were talking about how lovely everything was, and I said, "Oh, are you Americans?" And they said, "Yes." I said, "Oh, you poor things," and they said, "Yeah, we know. We're just trying to pretend we're Canadian."
It is a strategy at the moment.
So I've got nothing against Americans, but it's the American administration.
Yes, and that's it's good.
So and from that basis, yes, he's perfectly right. I should have said the American administration.
Well, fair enough. Thank you for taking that on this morning. And we do welcome other comments, and they will be dealt with frankly and openly, as you've just seen there. Squire of the Shire is also saying, after we have destroyed our own energy infrastructure or are unable to take advantage of what's beneath our feet, we could always buy some more oil and gas from the USA. More cynicism incoming there. Let's finish then with a look at the virtual front page of the Portugal Resident, where we have a wonderful billing here. Natasha, if I scroll down, you'll see there is a lovely podcast section now. You appear twice here. These are previous.
I know, and I keep saying, "Oh my God, what a dreadful picture! Let's change it."
Okay, all right. We'll deal with that. And look, maybe a last word here.
I love that.
President. Isn't that a great photo?
But I love the way he said he was going to leave on foot, because obviously there have been some occasions where he's had to be carried off because he's had two collapses.
Yes, he had a little bit too much of a postprandial liqueur, didn't he? On one occasion.
I think basically this man has been working at 140% for 10 years. I mean, he does not stop. But he had there was one particular day when he collapsed in such heat. It was
Yes.
unbelievable. I would have collapsed, I'm sure, particularly if I was
Yes.
wearing a suit. But it
Yes.
wasn't just that. He had something slightly. He needed some kind of catheterization, I think, to his heart. Something. I mean, bless his heart. I mean, he's not young.
He's no spring chicken, is he? But there he is, acting like one.
But he's, despite looking fairly sort of reptilian, he's a great guy.
That's personal reference of the week. Last week it was a man's head. This week,
yeah, I'm sorry about that.
I think we go to places other podcasts do not. And just finally, then, Natasha, because I'd like to know how you'll remember him. He says here, as you've written, Marcelo claims to have no idea how people will remember him. That's how people are going to remember him in that picture right there. And these people look genuinely happy about being in this selfie, don't they? It doesn't look like a PR stunt where, like, oh, do we have to? They're all loving being in Marcelo's selfie here.
Because he's got such an enthusiastic personality. And so you have to just go along with it.
How will you remember him?
I just remember him as a really funny and intelligent man who occasionally, as he said in this article, occasionally I did well and occasionally I didn't do so well.
Yeah,
he did occasionally have some major mistakes, particularly when it came to the helping along his son getting this expensive medication for some twins. But anyway, that's all in a way, it's all in the past. And yes, it just shows we all make mistakes. But I think he was a fantastic choice.
Not too bad for a
10-year. And what I loved also about what he says in this article, he says, a lot of times I've had the experience of wishing past presidents wouldn't say how they feel.
Yes.
He didn't mention any names, but there is one that never stops writing the most miserable articles.
Really?
And he said, I won't be doing that, which is great.
He's going to go and do something else now after 10 years of service.
He's going to teach in America, actually.
Yep, I think you're right on constitutional law, perhaps, I think is what I heard. And he'll be leaving on foot as he entered. And this sounds biblical, doesn't it? And wishing his successor, Antonio José Seguro, to be the best of presidents. That's very good. And I'm expecting to see the new president in Caldas Terrena, where he lives, eschewing life in the palace. And I'm a bit reluctant. I know if it was Marcelo, I could just bowl up to him, couldn't I, and say, "Podzero selfie." But with the new one, I don't know if that's going to be his style or not. We shall see on that.
I don't think so somehow. No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, last word to you then, Natasha. Thank you so much for your 3 picks. I know how difficult it's been with all that's going on in the world in this age of discombobulation, as I refer to it. Last word from you as we go into our Bon Fin Semana here in Portugal.
Well, I just hope I don't upset people like that poor man in wherever it was, the man you quoted. I don't mean to upset people, but obviously, we do say what we feel.
Yes, and long may it continue, Natasha.
I think that's something really important. I don't want to become politically correct, because then you just become incredibly boring.
Well, funnily enough, I don't think the man who said it is politically correct either. And I think that was a very good exchange. You said what you had to say. He said what he had to say, and we figured it out. That's how it should be, right?
Yes.
Yes. Completely. On that note, we wish you a very good weekend, and we'll see you again next week. Take care.
Fantastic. Have a good weekend. Take care. Bye.